My name is Henry. Henry Thomas Williams. 81 years, I can't even believe how quickly these decades have flown by. I used to wear a suit with polished buttons and smelled of fresh coffee and newspaper ink. And now I knit a scarf myself, because my grandchildren are no longer interested in it. I live alone in a small house in the suburbs of Boston, which I built with my own hands when the children were small and life was big. My wife, Alice, died 7 years ago. Heart. We lived together for almost 52 years, and since then silence has become my only interlocutor. I used to be afraid of loneliness. Now we are on, you, with her. But there are days when it presses harder on my chest than old asthma. And what is most painful is not just silence in the room. This is the silence in the voices of my children. She is different. Heavier. I have 3 children, Michael, Sarah and John. Each of them has their own life, and I don't get in the way. I never wanted to be a burden. Never asked for anything extra. I was the father who took a back seat so that the children would shine. I remember giving my last so that Michael could go to college without debt. How he carried Sarah on his shoulders after the evening shift, because she was afraid of the dark. How he built a wooden boat for John, because he dreamed of becoming a captain. Where is all this now? They're calling, from time to time. Usually at Christmas or Thanksgiving. Sometimes Sarah's husband brings me groceries, silently, quickly. Michael once sent me a tablet. To watch movies, Dad, he said. I pressed a few buttons, saw my wrinkled face in the camera, and turned it off. Since then, it has been gathering dust. Real films are in my memory. Grandchildren are already large. One day, David, the eldest, looked down on me and asked, "What are you doing now, grandfather?" "Just sit and wait." I smiled then. At least in his chest, as if something heavy had come off. I understand that young people are different. The world is different. And yet, does old age equal oblivion? Every day I go out on the porch. I sit in an old rocking chair and watch the sun creep up and then down again. Neighbors pass by, nod, rarely greet. For them, I'm just an old man, one of many. Invisible. I used to build this district, advise the city council, organize local meetings. And now? It was as if I had been erased from reality. Not long ago I was in the supermarket. He walked slowly, carefully. He asked the employee to help get the jar from the top shelf. He looked at me as if I was an empty place and just left. I stood for another 5 minutes, until some girl, a student, apparently, handed it to me with a smile. "My grandfather is like that too," she said. Those words hit, but they didn't hurt. They were warm. Unexpectedly warm. Sometimes I ask myself, is there something wrong with me? Or maybe society is just afraid to look into the eyes of old age. Because we are like a mirror. A reminder that time takes everything. But I'm still here. I'm still alive. And I remember everything, every battle, every wound, every victory. I remember the real me. But sometimes it seems that no one else is. There are days in memory that shine brighter than the sun itself. And not because there were fewer wrinkles or more strength then, but because the heart beat faster. In my case, it was 1965. That's when I met Alice. We met at a dance. I had just returned from the army. I worked as a car mechanic, my hands were constantly covered in oil, but my soul was pure. She appeared in that hall like spring after a long winter. In a dress with a blue print and hair braided in a sloppy knot. I was so stupid to spill punch on her shoes. She laughed. And then I realized, if I can make this woman laugh all my life, I will be a happy husband. We got married a year later. At that time, I worked 2 jobs, during the day in the garage, at night I delivered newspapers. She is a nurse at a local hospital. It was hard. Very difficult. But love was not measured by comfort then. She measured how you would cover her with a blanket in the middle of the night, or how she would wait for you from night with a bowl of soup and a smile. I remember how Michael was born. Our firstborn. I was so scared. Shook like an aspen leaf. But when his tiny hand squeezed my finger, I felt like a giant. I then swore that I would do everything to make my children have a better life than I did. And I did. When we bought this house, we didn't even have normal furniture. I myself assembled beds from boards, painted the walls at night. Sarah was still learning to walk then, running after me around the rooms with a brush in her hands. John showed up later, unexpectedly, but he was the one who taught me to be patient. His curiosity made me look for answers to questions that I would never have asked myself. I was respected in the community. He organized charity events, held meetings of veterans, and set up new benches in the park together with his neighbors. I believe that if you do something well, it stays. Now, passing by the same bench, I see teenagers sitting with their phones, spitting next to them. And I think, maybe it doesn't stay well. Or maybe we just don't have time to see it come back. With Alice, we didn't have a noisy life. They did not travel the world, did not have expensive cars. But every evening she made tea with mint, sat next to each other, and we just talked. We talked about children, about the world, about our fears. She always listened to me. And now, when I speak, it's as if into the void. Children listen, as if with one ear. Grandchildren, not at all. They look at their screens as if there is more truth there than in my stories. I once asked Sarah if she remembered how we made a toy kitchen together. She smiled mechanically and said, "Yes, something happened, Dad." And then I sawed, painted, glued for a week, just to make her feel like a great hostess. Is it possible to, something? I don't hold grudges. Really. I just regret that all these bright pictures in my memory are only mine. Like a movie that you watch alone in a dark cinema. And I want to say, look. It was. It didn't matter. But there was no one to show it. And yet. I am grateful. Because he had. Because he lived. Because he loved. This winter, for the first time, I doubted what else was needed. Not to anyone there, but in general. Neediness is not about having a role. It's about someone waiting for your voice. And mine, it seems that they have not been waiting for a long time. It all started when I fell in the yard. Frozen. I was just about to get the mail when my foot moved on the ice plate. He fell sharply, hit his shoulder, could not get up. He lay there for about 10 minutes, until his neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, passed by. She called an ambulance. The doctors were young, polite, but spoke as if I was somewhere nearby, and not in the body. The older man, 80 plus, probably osteoporosis. Transport to the reception room, then standard observation. I was lying on a gurney, staring at the ceiling, and the thought was spinning in my head, is my name now just older man? They waited in the reception room for 4 hours. It hurt like hell, but no one approached. When the doctor finally examined, he looked at me and said, "At your age, it's okay with a collarbone fracture." And I used to build hospitals. He sponsored a local clinic. He repaired ambulances. And now, just normal. After discharge, Michael called. Said, "Dad, you know, Karen and I have a lot of things to do right now. If anything, call me." John sent me some medicine from the Amazon. Sarah arrived a week later. She brought soup and said, as if by the way, "Dad, maybe it's time to think about a home for the elderly. There is care, communication, specialists." I was silent. I raised this woman. He held her in his arms when she had appendicitis, sat by the bed at night. And now, with such a cautious, politically correct voice, she hints that I am superfluous in my own home. And grandchildren. The other day, David came with his dad, sat on my couch, did not take his eyes off the phone. I asked him how he was doing in college, and he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Nothing, just a lot of things." Old people don't understand this. In the store, the seller turned to my trolley, not to me. "What does he need?" he asked my escort from the volunteer organization. "Like him?" "I'm here, I hear. I say. I'm still alive. I'm not angry. No. But each such moment is like small stones in shoes. You leave, and they rub, hurt, do not allow you to take a step freely. And one day, you just stop. At night, I lie down, look at the cracks in the ceiling and ask myself, what will happen if tomorrow I am gone? Will they notice? Will they remember who I was, and not just how old I was? And here I am most tormented, not that I am not loved. And the fact that they fell out of love with me quietly. As if I had become uncomfortable. Like an old coat, once it warmed, but now it hangs in the closet, because it is not fashionable. Indifferent is the most terrible word. It doesn't scream. It is silent. But it cuts deeper than a scream. It happened on Monday. I remember because it is on Mondays that I go to the old park, where the whole community used to plant trees. Now this place has changed, new benches, more paving stones, less space. But the oak tree on the hill is my landmark. He seems to be as old as I am. He and I are silent together. I sat on the bench and wondered if I was bored with myself. There was a note in his pocket, a list of medicines that he had to pick up. But I put it off again for later. There was a strange feeling, as if I was waiting not for medicine, but for some kind of permission, live on. Or die peacefully. Not far away, a man sat on a bench. He looks about 50 years old. In jeans, a black jacket, with a face that seems to wear stories in wrinkles. He opened the book, but did not read it, his gaze sliding into space. I don't often speak first. But something about him made me say, "Good weather." He smiled at the corner of his lips. Yes. Not often she is calm. Like silence before something important. We talked for about 40 minutes. No introductions. No questions asked. It's just that two strangers who were not alone in their thoughts for the first time in a long time. His name was Nick. Writer. He is working on a book about the lives of ordinary Americans. He says he is tired of heroes who always win. He wants to write about those who fight within themselves. "You know, old man," he said suddenly, "you speak as if no one ever told you that your stories mattered. But I'd listen to you for hours. Because there is depth in you. And this is a rarity." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to cry, but there were no tears. It was as if the words I had been waiting for so long had broken through something in me. I lived thinking that no one was interested in me anymore. And here is someone who sees more in me than wrinkles and age. We agreed to meet again. And he suggested. Write it. Just write down what you carry in your heart. No embellishments. Uncensored. Perhaps this will be the beginning of something new. And even if no one reads it, you will hear yourself. At home, I sat for a long time in front of an empty notebook. His hands were trembling. But I started writing. Not because I'm a writer. But because I'm still alive. And being alive means I can convey something. I didn't turn on the TV that night. I didn't listen to the radio. I just wrote. Your own story. Not heroic. And the real one. With sweat, loss, pain, love, hope. And you know, I wasn't alone. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself. Not old Henry, not problem, not past. A person. When the phone rang, I didn't pick up the phone right away. Because my life is not about calls. And in the words that I finally allowed myself to say out loud. The next morning I woke up and did not immediately recognize myself. Something has changed. No, the pain in the shoulder remained, the old knees continued to crack like the old floor. But in my head, there was silence. Another. Not the depressing, lonely one, but pure. Calm. Like the dawn after a storm. I made myself coffee, real, strong, Turkish, and not the instant nasty stuff I usually threw into a cup. And he sat down to write. No plan, no goal. It's simple, page by page. I wrote about Alice, about the children, about the first car I assembled from a pile of parts, about crying in the bathroom when I couldn't pay the loan, and about holding Sarah in my arms during her first dance at school. I wrote and felt that every word was like a brick in a bridge between me and the world, which already considered me forgotten. A few days later, I called Nick. He invited me to his place. He came with a bottle of cheap wine and the words. I knew you wouldn't stop. We stayed up late, I read my notes to him, and he was just silent and nodded. And then he said. Henry, these are not just memories. This is a portrait of the era. It is necessary. If you'll allow me, I want to help you make a book out of it. Book. I myself could hardly believe it. I'm an old car mechanic, a veteran, a grandfather in a knitted sweater, and a book. I hesitated for a long time. But something in me told me that time does not pass in vain if you make something valuable out of it. So I agreed. I bought a cheap printing machine. He learned to work with a laptop, which he was afraid of like a wolf. Grandson Jake helped set up the font and formatting. And for the first time in a long time, we talked to him. Not out of duty, not out of politeness, sincerely. He listened. I really listened. Grandpa, he said one evening, I had no idea how much you had been through. That's cool. You are a real hero. I couldn't answer. The words are stuck somewhere between the heart and the throat. But I realized, I am no longer invisible. I started going to the library, speaking at small veterans meetings, and reading excerpts from a book at a local center for the elderly. And suddenly I saw around me people like me, those whom the world seemed to have left on pause. And we started talking again. Together. For the first time in years. And most importantly, I felt that I could be useful not as a reminder of the past, but as a voice, as a source of experience, as a bridge between generations. The children began to call more often. Sarah even offered to spend the evening with the grandchildren so that I could tell them how I met their grandmother. I agreed. Not for them. For myself. I'm no longer afraid of silence. Because it was filled with meaning. I'm living again, not the way I used to, but for real. Today I woke up earlier than usual. The sun had not yet risen, and I was already sitting on the veranda, with a blanket on my shoulders and a cup of hot cocoa in my hands. Yes, cocoa. Not coffee. As you get older, the taste changes. But not only in drinks. In everything. I used to think that old age was a loss. Forces, people, opportunities. And it's true. We lose a lot. But today I know that she also gives. It gives depth, patience, the ability to see through. We become mirrors of time. And also, memory carriers. I wrote a book. Not a bestseller, not a masterpiece, but a real one. My words now have form, paper, ink. It is read in a local club. It is passed from hand to hand by other old women. She didn't change the world. But it changed me. I reconciled with Michael. He called and said, "Dad, I'm sorry." And I only answered, I was not waiting for words. And that was enough. Sarah comes every Sunday. We prepare the cake according to Alice's old recipe. John brings his grandchildren. Now they don't run away to their phones, they listen. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they cry. I don't aspire to be a hero for them. But I am a living history. And it means something. Nick wrote the foreword to my manuscript. He called it Light and Gray Hair. I don't know if I deserve that name. But I am grateful. Because every word is like proof that my life had meaning. And you know what I understood? Dignity is not about always being strong. It's about not disappearing from the inside when the world stops noticing you. And one more thing, love does not disappear. It changes like the seasons. Sometimes it freezes. But spring comes, and it grows again. I often think about those who feel invisible right now. About men and women in empty rooms, waiting for a call, a letter, a look. If you are one of them, find a way to speak. Write. Call. Take the first step. Because as long as we are alive, we have a voice. And to you, young people, I will tell you one thing. Do not pass by old eyes. They reflect your path. We are not a burden. We are the roots. And without roots, a tree does not grow. So remember. He who carries memory within himself will never be empty. And the one who gives it lives forever. And you know, I'm no longer afraid of winter. Because I survived it. And now it's spring again. Subscribe and like, and send the video to your friends.